is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
All right, welcome back into another edition of Three Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined as always by Cole Manbeck, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury, Derek Young from K-State Online, and we were talking about K-State 1-0 in the Big 12, 77-52. They crushed UCF in the Big 12 opener at Bramlage Coliseum, probably the easiest Big 12 game of the season, but man, K-State took no time in jumping out, scoring the first 12 points of the game, and absolutely rolling UCF, and that calls for a nice toast. Make sure that you've got your 360 vodka or your Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. I anticipate that you are holding it up in the air right now to toast the Cats on a 1-0 start to Big 12 play. If you are a bourbon fan, we've heard lots of rave reviews about Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. Make sure to check it out, and 360 vodka if that is more your speed too. Great way to get your watch parties ready to go for the rest of Big 12 play, whatever it is that you might be celebrating here in the new year. Appreciate our friends at Holiday Distillery. Great K-State folks who support us, so make sure that you support them. I think the best performance of the season probably for this team, right? I mean, K-State had 2 quad one wins at one point this year. The Bryce Hopkins injury at Providence is going to really hurt that one. Nova obviously is up and down. I mean, we'll see how that holds up. But so there have been better wins, quote unquote, over better teams. But in terms of how well K-State has played, this was about as complete as they have looked the entire year, and led by finally getting the shooting out of Tyler Perry that I think we all expected this year, that he would be able to deliver things like that. But just more energy. And maybe the place to start, Derek, is like we've talked about this a little bit, but this team seems to have a lot of like playing up or down to the opponent in them. And with Big 12 play there and a fired up crowd and just, everybody kind of flipping the switch to like, all right, it's conference play, man, and the best conference in America. You can't be bringing out the effort that they did in so many of those bye games at home throughout the non-conference schedule. They certainly responded because it looked like a really energized, fired up team that was much, much sharper than we've seen most of this year.
Yeah, in terms of a consistent 100% effort and attention to detail start to finish, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better performance. Now, I think in terms of the game where they had the best level of toughness and grit, I would have called that probably the win over Providence. In terms of probably everything clicking, maybe, and having the quality of win behind it, I probably would go Villanova. The only game in terms of the effort and energy level that we're discussing here in association with this perhaps being their best performance start to finish, that being the UCF game. The LSU game in Baton Rouge was close, I think. So yeah, those two I think are along the same lines, and not to look past this quality of win because there's a lot of good things that we saw that we probably should identify. But more than anything, and I'm probably thinking a little too big picture already, is that because you saw what you might get from a intensity and effort level and energy level from this team start to finish in Big 12 play, not to diminish the next two opponents, especially since they are on the road, but there is a conceivable path, and some of it is fortunate scheduling on the Kansas State behalf in terms of the Big 12 play. That 4-1 is on the table for this team if they do what they did against UCF for the next 2 weeks. Like I said, not to diminish, West Virginia and Texas Tech are solid teams. West Virginia's had some bright moments. Last weekend was not it when they got blown out by Houston. Texas Tech just beat Texas, I think, on the road. So obviously that's going to be a tough game regardless. But just from a realistic and winnable standpoint, I think that one is still on the chart for Kansas State. Now, Baylor, probably regardless of location, is going to be tough to pull off. But after Baylor is Oklahoma State at home. And that's kind of like UCF at this point, where that's a game you have to have, you have to win on your schedule. So you probably feel good about 3-2 on this section of 5 games. But I think 4-1 is more than practical.
I feel better about beating Baylor at home than winning at Tech. Tech, I mean, the energy at Tech is going to be at a high after the win at Texas. They're 12-2 now. That team's really coming together. I watched that game against Texas. Yeah. They look like they're really developing a cohesion there.
The only thing I would say is they're due for a bit of a letdown. I don't know when it's going to come, but that's probably, they're due for that. Like, you remember Kansas State was cooking last year, lost home to Texas after a win. It kind of feels similar to that. On the other side, I agree with you on Baylor just because Kansas State is so good when their crowd is juiced up this year. They play different, but I look ahead to that game. It's going to be minus like 10 degrees, and I worry about the crowd coming out for that.
Well, that'll be what? I mean, the students will have just gotten back for the Baylor game on January 16th. And the only reason I say that, DY, is because I just watched Baylor go to overtime at Oklahoma State, right? So I'm just, Baylor on the road in a tough environment. It'll, K-State will play up to it. So, of course, Scott Drew would like to beat Jerome Tang too, right? I mean,
Jerome Tang and Dream Dowling, if there's two coaches that know Grant McCaslin well enough, it's those two.
Yeah. Anyways. Yeah.
Well, guys, look, Cole, by the way, I watched the entire Texas game and came away really impressed. Now, I guess the one thing you can say is not to get into the Pop Isaacs thing too far down that road, but if something were to happen to him, I mean, that throws a pretty big wrench in it because he was there playing and he was playing well. The other thing is, we could have another conversation about this. Like Joe Toussaint looks real good for Texas Tech and would definitely help out. And K-State basically had the opportunity and passed. Tang sounded like didn't want to pay what he was asking for, what he was going to get from Texas Tech. So, I mean, look, I digress. But yes, I mean, the outlook has changed significantly, but I guess it's a fair point to come back and say, like, hey, guys, I mean, it was UCF. I mean, UCF's not very good. I know the record was like, okay, 9-3 coming into the game, but I think it was on Patreon the other day, DUI, we were like going through their schedule and like looking at who the wins actually were against. And it's like, I mean, basically nobody. UCF looked very outmatched all across the board. So that to me is why I think you look more at like, how did it happen? What can you take from that? And to me, that really starts with, like, I thought the most encouraging thing about the game was Tyler Perry, especially paired with what we heard after the game where he talked about how difficult it was for him there for a while, like acknowledged that it had been a really difficult stretch. He was shooting 30% from three going into the game, and I think we expected him to be like a 40% three-point shooter. That's what he was billed as. Jerome Tang called him the best shooter in the country. And there was also the nod to like him being motivated by some of what he had seen on social media about him. And it's like, hey, whatever it takes, man. But if that's going to produce 6 of 11 from downtown every night, maybe we need to fire up some more tweets. Like somebody make some burners and get out there and start talking about Tyler Perry if it's going to do this every single night. But the biggest thing is just he had the confidence, man. Like he had the confidence to just let it fly. Like it's so true that when he hesitates for even like a second, like there are times where he will catch it, be open, and like hesitate for a second and then decide to put it up. It throws the whole thing off. He's got such a quick trigger. He's got to be a guy that just gets the ball and lets it fly. And I'm cool if he's missing open shots. He needs to shoot, man. He's been too unselfish too often this year. And there was a moment even in that game where there was a three. We were all texting about it. There was a moment where he passed up an open one, and we're all just like, dude, Tyler, you got to shoot that, man. For this team to be good, you got to shoot that because you got to be hunting your shot and hitting threes. And then after that, it was like a switch flipped, and he was like, okay, you're right. I've got to be shooting these. And he started shooting everything, and he started making everything. So I don't know. My hope is that's not some aberration. And the fact that we saw him go no hesitation on open threes is something that has clicked now for the rest of the year.
I'm going to say it's the law of averages, not aberration, that he's going to be lights out, for a little bit here to kind of make up for the start, because those things typically have a way of evening themselves out.
When he passed up that open three early in the second half, John, he then hit 5 threes in a row right after that. And the guy sitting next to me where I was sitting when he passed that open three, he's like, why didn't he take that open three? It's like he's got to shoot the ball with confidence. And then he hit 5 in a row right after that and just started letting it fly. And you could see the confidence soar. He ends up 6 of 11 from 3 during the game, but I wouldn't take a lot from that number. He was better than that. He had to force like 3 up with the shot clock expiring late in the game that were really, really difficult shots. But he had arguably his best game, 25 points. Somebody, 13 on our Patreon page, John. I don't know if you saw it or DY, but he predicted going into the game, Tyler Perry's going to get hot from 3 and score 25 against UCF, and he did. scored 25 right on the dot, and Kansas State pulls out a really dominant victory. I mean, you guys mentioned it, UCF, they were 328th in the country in non-con strength of schedule, according to Ken Palm, so they had not played much. They did take a 13-0 Ole Miss team down to the wire and lost by 2 in Orlando. Now, Ole Miss still is like 84th in Ken Palm because they played such a weak schedule, but nearly knocked off the Rebels in that matchup. UCF came into the K-State game 71st in Ken Palm. They were in the top, I think, 75 in the NCAA net rankings as well. And K-State dominated. I mean, look, K-State was only 4.5-point favorites going into this game. So while what we say about UCF, no, they're not an NCAA tournament team, but it's a team that is at least respect. They're better than Chicago State, right? I mean, they're better than North Alabama. Yeah. Some of these teams that K-State had struggled with, K-State comes out and blitzes them. And DY, you mentioned it during the game, and I had thought the same exact thought. K-State needed a dominant victory, not only, just for confidence, and it was really comforting to watch them blow somebody out, but for the metrics. Winning that game in the fashion that they did boosted K-State's analytics and metrics and the offensive defensive efficiency numbers and Ken Palm rankings. They moved, I think, they were, where are they at now in Ken Palm? They jumped 75th. Now they're 61st as of today after that game. So they're 14 spots.
Yeah. And they were still, at one point, they had jumped almost 20 spots in Ken Palm. I think it evened it out a little bit.
Yeah, and then in the net rankings, they had jumped 17 spots from 94 to 77 with that victory. And so when you blow out teams like that, it really helps your metrics. And so K-State did that. I mean, you just look at LSU on K-State's non-con resume. You talked about it, DY. They went on the road. They were 131st in the net rankings. They were on the hinge of a quad 2 victory for Kansas State going into Saturday. They go on the road and beat Texas A&M by 15 points, who was 25th in the net, 23rd in Ken Palm. LSU jumped 35 spots from 131 to 96 in the NCAA net rankings. They were going to secure a quad 2 win for Kansas State at worst with Jalen Cook back at guard now. There's a possibility LSU gets hot and they get in that top 75 of the net eventually and become a quad 1 win for K-State.
Well, I like that. I like that. You were texting about that, and I thought, like, hey, man, that's a positive. I mean, the non-con may age better than we actually thought it was. Like, that's kind of to the point that we've said about this team the whole time, and why this win feels pretty good. Because, like, as rough as it's been, and there have been many moments, when you're in overtime with Oral Roberts or North Alabama, whoever the hell it is, there have been many moments where you're like, dude, this team just, Naquan Tomlin's not coming back. Now we have the Quez Glover injury. This thing is going nowhere. But they have still put themselves in perfect position to be a tournament team. I mean, that's absolutely out there, 1,000% for them. And so they've treaded water enough to be here at a point where they can elevate themselves. And this was an early sign, at least, of elevating themselves.
The only thing I will say was a couple of things. One, UCF, I watched the game. It was only the first or second week of the season. UCF kind of hung out with Miami for the most part, too, for a little bit. LSU, I agree. There's an outside shot there of them maybe hopping into the top 75, especially with Jalen Cook. He's really good. But the SEC's a lot better, too. So I got to probably watch there because you got Auburn, Kentucky, if Ole Miss is real, Ole Miss, Alabama.
Arkansas sucks, though.
Tennessee. Arkansas is really brutal right now. Mizzou sucks right now, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, shocker. I mean, Dennis, I should be careful, I guess, because we're seeing the Trump regression a little bit here. But I'm shocked that a Dennis Gates regression was coming. I'm absolutely shocked by that. I'm not shocked by the quality of home field apparel, because every time I wear it, it is great. It looks awesome. It is very comfortable. It is what all of the kids are wearing these days. And if you're going to be at the Baylor game on the 16th, we need to see in some home field apparel at Bramlage Coliseum. So make sure you go to homefieldapparel.com and get stocked up. You can choose from over 40 plus options that they have. K-State gear, lots of great old logos. I love the old Cat Script basketball logo, which is obviously perfect right now for hoop season. So make sure you head over there and use promo code 3MA23 for 15% off your first order, or even hooking you up with 15% off your first order using promo code 3MA23. So check it out, homefieldapparel.com. You can also look through 100 plus other schools that they have up there. It is great. It's taken over the college sports world. Everybody is doing it. ESPN analysts, I was just seeing like Mina Kimes rocking her Washington home field apparel gear. So everybody is on top of this, people. Make sure that you are with the trends. And we are back in just a moment.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
All right, what else stands out to you as positives here in this game? I mean, if you're looking through the box score, like Will McNair gives you 11 and 6. He was 5 of 7 from the floor. Pretty nice performance from him. You know, David Gasson continues to struggle from the floor, but he pulled down 14 rebounds. You got to give him credit for doing that. Arthur Kaluma, 3 of 9 shooting, but 14 and 6. Cam Carter, not his best scoring night, but he had 6 assists, 2 turnovers. Where do you guys go next with the positives?
I'll probably point out David Gasson because he gets a lot of flack for being very, very limited on the offensive end, especially now that he's probably asked to kind of get out of his comfort zone and do some things that he's not necessarily great at doing when playing the 4 next to Will McNair at the 5. That's why when there's stretches during the game where he is solid on the offensive end, it's because they have 3 guards in there and he's playing the 5 because Arthur Kaluma is at the 4. And something that goes overlooked because, offense is sexy and everyone really only pays attention to that. And it's hard to really point out defensive greatness, especially when a lot of it is done off the ball or how you defend a pick and roll and not necessarily getting a steal or a block. But for my money, David Gasson is one of the best defenders in the Big 12, and it's probably not close. And in fact, he was a good defender last year. And he's probably 10 times the defender he was last year because now he's become a great rebounder, as you alluded to. 14 rebounds yesterday. Or that was Saturday, sorry. And I mean, this team in general is rebounding the ball pretty well, especially in the offensive glass, where I believe they're number 1 in the Big 12 at the moment. But David Gasson can guard essentially 1 through 5, switch everything, defend a pick and roll beautifully, get the rebound. He's doing everything that you're asking of him in a very unsung way, while at the same time, he's probably become everybody's whipping boy because he struggled on the offensive end. So some of that, if you're going to slam David Gasson offensively, you better be praising him for defensively because Kansas State is also probably one of the best defensive teams in the Big 12 in the last month. They were exceptional on Saturday against UCF. A lot of that is David Gasson, and people aren't probably necessarily putting enough attention on that. Cam Carter the same way. What he is doing the most right now for Kansas State is being their best perimeter defender, especially on the ball, and still doing enough offensively because they need a third scorer, right? And it has to be Cam Carter, along with Perry and Kaluma. So I think Kansas State, say what you will, Kansas State needs Tyler Perry to shoot it. When he's shooting like that, they're tough to beat, but they aren't nearly what they can be, and they wouldn't be where they are even right now, even amidst the struggles without Cam Carter and David Gasson.
Yeah, I mean, look, David Gasson, I tweeted this out after the game on Saturday. David Gasson's now 3rd in the Big 12 in rebounds per game at 8.6 through 14 games. As you mentioned at DY, he's a terrific defender. He can guard and he can switch 1 through 5. He's versatile. That's so incredibly valuable for Kansas State and what they're trying to do on the defensive end of the floor. He's been terrific on the glass. Arthur Kaluma's 5th in the Big 12 and rebounding at 8.4 boards per game. So you got 2 of the top 5 rebounders per game in this league so far. K-State is actually 14th in the country in offensive rebounding percentage at 36% on the season. They're 49th in the country in rebounding rate. They've gotten better on the glass this year. So that's been a key thing. And then you mentioned a DY on the defensive end of the floor. They're jumping up in the analytics and Ken Palm's defensive metrics. And if you look at it, I mean, 60 points allowed to LSU, 62 to Nebraska. It was just an offensive thing with Nebraska. It's not like they were bad defensively in that game. 60 to Wichita State, and then 55 to Chicago State and 52 to UCF. So the most points scored against them over the last 5 games was 62 points against Nebraska. And I think Nebraska shot 37% from the floor overall.
I believe at one time their defensive efficiency, it wasn't that long ago. It was probably about a month ago, like halfway through the non-con, was in the 100s. I believe it's kind of peaked into the top 40.
Yeah, I think they're actually
33rd on Ken Palm.
Oh yeah, and that's exciting because literally, like I think through their first 7 games or so, it was like 121.
One of the things that they're doing really well as well, and I was looking this up for the West Virginia matchup on Tuesday night in Morgantown, but because West Virginia is typically good at getting to the free throw line, and West Virginia typically also fouls you a lot. And so I was looking up the opponent free throws attempted per offensive play based off percentage, and West Virginia is 6th in the country at 17.4% of opponent free throws attempted per offensive play. K-State is tied with them at 6th in the country. So K-State's done a really nice job of not putting their opponents on the foul line defensively as well this year. They're playing defense without fouling, and so they've been really good on the defensive end of the floor.
And they're getting to the free throw line. I think Jerome Tang mentioned this in his post-game press conference, and I think Tom Gilbert, the SID, did confirm it. I think Kansas State has made more free throws than their opponents have even attempted this year.
Well, let's just check out this free throws attempted per 100 possessions. K-State's 47th in the country at that.
It's like 230 or something like that. They've made more than they've allowed attempts.
Yeah. Cam Carter, you mentioned it, John. While I think he had 12 points, but he had the 6 assists. He had 3 blocks as well. He was really good. Once again, he made a heck of a block where he slapped the ball up against the backboard in transition for UCF. You guys talked about it, but on the defensive end of the floor, specific to the UCF game, K-State holds them to 34% from the floor. But UCF at one point was 14 of 53 from the floor, 26%. The final 10 minutes of the game, when the game was out of control, K-State was up by 35. UCF went 8 of 12 from the floor the rest of the way to boost their shooting numbers a little bit. They held UCF's top 3 scorers to a combined 8 of 30 from the floor. Jalen Summers was their leading scorer at almost 19 points per game. Jalen Sellers, I'm sorry. He was averaging almost 19 per game. He only scores 8 on 3 of 13 shooting. A really good defensive effort by Kansas State, and you guys mentioned it. You could just tell they were energized from the start. They blitzed UCF early on in that game and sent a message, and then frustrated the Knights throughout the rest of that contest. So really nice to see. It was really refreshing just to have a laid back, be able to sit there and watch and relax, and know K-State had it in hand. The one thing I thought, John and DY, that was most interesting, though, was just the rotation of the bench and the minutes. So I think that's something that stood out to me. Maybe we should hit on.
Yeah, you had to bring us to that. I mean, I was going to get there because I know that's the one piece of it that's maybe, I guess you could debate whether or not it's negative. To me, it does feel a little bit negative. I wanted to throw this question out there first, though. Like, is Cam Carter a dude? Are we at the point where Cam Carter is a dude? How do you classify that?
I think he's averaging 16, 17 points a game. Hard to say he's not.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you look at like the complete portfolio,
best perimeter defender too. On top of that, yeah.
I mean, I think the one thing with me that I still would like to see from him is that 3-point percentage go up a little bit. But
what's he at? 31? Is he at around 31 right now?
It was around 30 before the game. Let me go look it up real quick.
Yeah, no, and I think he went 2 of 6 in the game from 3. Yeah, if you could get Cam to around 35% from 3, that would be great.
He is currently 29% from 3.
Yeah, we got to get that, because last year alone he was 33% from 3. So, and we saw moments last year where he caught fire from beyond the arc in a few games. I look back at that game at Texas, a couple other games. Heck, he made a couple against Michigan State, I think, in the NCAA tournament, one in a really big moment where he just caught it and shot it. And the other thing I would say, John, that stood out, I thought Dorian Finister showed a couple flashes, at least at the rim. Like he showed the ability, he showed some athleticism to be able to really finish at the rim. He caught that one in transition for the alley-oop layup. He had another really tough finish in traffic where he bodied up against a guy. Like you could see some flashes where he's just a redshirt freshman and he's a bigger guard. He's 6'5". You could see as he gets bigger and stronger, and if he could develop an outside shot, like he's got the athleticism and the traits probably to be a contributor.
I don't know that the confidence is there enough yet, or the game is slowed down enough for him yet to be anything on the offensive end, other than maybe transition. But in terms of defense and hustle, you're getting that from him that you are getting from anyone else on the bench.
Well, and that's why he's playing, and this obviously parlays into the discussion Cole teased a moment ago about the rotation. I mean, they shut down the rotation to basically 7 players. Finister played 18 minutes off the bench. Day-Day Ames played 13 off the bench. And, look, another tough night for Day-Day. 0 for 5, 0 for 3, 1 point, no assists. They need more there. But nobody else. Taj Manning, Michaela Bridge, Jarrell Colbert, RJ Jones, they played the last 2 minutes of the game. That's it. They didn't get out there on the floor. And it's great. Dorian Finister, I got to give him credit. You guys are right. There have been moments this year where I thought he's not a high major player, but he does give effort, and he had some nice flashes and nice moments there. I wonder what the long-term prognosis is of that. If they're not going to get what they need out of RJ Jones to feel like they can put him on the floor, I don't know. I don't know if that, you guys feel confident about that 7-man rotation, just Day-Day and Dorian Finister off the bench holding up throughout Big 12 play. It's a good thing to shorten your rotation because, a lot of these weird lineups that they had and guys that aren't giving out, there have been problems throughout the year. So you kind of have to do it at this time, but it's not great, man. You still see flashes of what everybody can do. We know RJ can shoot, which we're sitting here talking about the guards and shooting ability. They could certainly use that. They can use the offense that RJ can bring to the table. Michaela Bridge, every time he gets on the floor, the guy's doing something crazy, which he has the alley-oop at the end of the game, which was the best highlight of the entire night. And, Jarrell Colbert's obviously got a lot of length and size that he could help you out inside. But anyway, it just feels like that is still very much in flux. What is going to happen with those guys, with Jerome Tang sending a message with the playing time right now?
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's sending a message as much as you can't reward guys not playing hard enough in practice or not being mature enough. You can't reward that because it's the precedent it sets. You need to reward the guys that are putting forth the appropriate amount of effort, preparation, and hard work, because that's what you want your program to be founded upon. And if you let one guy get away with it and play him anyway, then everyone else is like, oh, okay, I don't have to work as hard because if I'm still good enough, I'm going to play anyway. So that's what we're getting into. So some of those guys just have to see why Dorian Finister is playing and then mimic that behavior. And maybe some of those things will correct itself in that way. But you can't reward someone not taking practice as, I don't know if it seriously enough is the word, but you got to play hard in practice. You got to prepare hard. And for some of the freshmen, that's common. You don't get to college sometimes, especially where some of these kids come from, and understand how much work and how much is asked of you just to be able to be a college basketball player. It's a shock to the system in many ways. So there is an adjustment process and a transition process. For someone older, that's a little more disappointing, I would say. But another thing, Jerome Tang said, in an ideal world, he would like his rotation to be 8 players. It's, Saturday was 7, so really, he's okay if it's just one more than that. To your question, can they ride and get through Big 12 play with just 7, with some of the maybe offensive limitations that you're going to have when you're playing guys like David Gasson and Dorian Finister? Probably not. But I don't know that RJ Jones, Taj Manning, Jarrell Colbert, or Michaela Bridge is giving you that much. Yes, we see the flashes from Michaela Bridge every time he gets on the floor, but people also don't see some of the flaws when he's on the floor too. The defensive stuff, right? Because defense matters and hustling matters. And if you don't, as a coach, if you don't reward that or punish that if it's not going the right way, then you're not going to get what you want out of everyone else on your roster because they're watching everything.
Well, to me, it's Cole. I'll see if you agree with it. To me, it's RJ. They need RJ Jones to get his bleep together because they need that shooting ability. They need somebody who can shoot and score the ball. He's the one out of that whole group that Taj Manning was a nice story the other night. He kind of saved them against Chicago State, and shout out to him for that. Jarrell Colbert, there are some flashes. I was certainly really excited about him when he came in, but they absolutely need RJ. And Cole, I'm sorry. I've got to wedge in a DraftKings read. For you here. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL playoffs, is bringing you an offer that'll help make the playoffs electrifying. New customers can bet $5 on any game and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code KCSN. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777. There might be another 7 in there, people. I don't know. It's written out like 5 times in front of me. Or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Oh, here it is again. It's a sad Monday. I didn't need this on Monday. I'm sorry, Ontario. I hope you guys are having a good start to your week, but unfortunately, it's not going to be with DraftKings because it is void in Ontario. So condolences to our friends up north. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. All right, Cole. Am I accurate on RJ Jones there? If you're going to get one more to make that 8-man rotation, do they need RJ Jones more than the rest?
Yeah, probably. I think RJ is the guy that gives you the most scoring punch, potentially an outside perimeter threat for a team that, is hovering right around 31% from 3 on the season. They came into the UCF game, I believe, 287th in the country in 3-point percentage this year. They need a lift from the outside. Now, obviously, Tyler Perry getting hot will help with that, but they need other guys that can do it. You look at Day-Day, you mentioned it, John. I mean, as I look toward the future of this season, the rest of the way, Day-Day is going to be such a critical piece, and he's in a huge slump right now. I don't know if it's confidence or what, but Day-Day Ames is shooting 27% from the floor overall, and he's shooting 23% from 3. He is 13 of 43 on 2s this year as well, which is 30%. That's incredibly low for 2-point volume. He's got to be a better finisher. He's made some really nice passes, but he's in a real slump right now. They got to get him going to give them a lift offensively. But when I look at that bench, I think RJ Jones is probably the guy that needs the biggest wake-up call because he's the guy that they need, to your point, to be able to give them a lift and an offensive spark plug on the perimeter. As I look at the rest of the bench, I think Caleb Rich would be another guy that I would really like to see, play more consistently game in and game out if he brings it in practice. Colbert, it's always felt like it's up and down with Jarrell Colbert. So I don't know what's going on there. He hasn't played hardly really in like five games now. I mean, his biggest moment was the North Alabama game when he gave them a big flash early in the second half to bring them back into that game when they were down by 10. And then Taj Manning, it's interesting because Taj Manning saves them on Tuesday night and Jerome Tang raved about him so much, but then he doesn't play until the last couple minutes. He doesn't go in the game until with those 4 guys. And you can see Jerome Tang. I don't know if you guys saw it. Did you guys see Jerome Tang? He was really getting into them as they were getting ready to check into the game, the 4 guys near half court. And, he's sending a message to them. It wasn't like berating them or anything, but you could tell he's really trying to give these guys a spark here and lift them up and send a message to them. They need to get out there and play hard and prove themselves. So hopefully the wake-up call has occurred by now. I would have hoped the wake-up call occurred with Jerome Tang's comments on Tuesday night against Chicago State and the Taj Manning and what he said about him, but it was still just a 7-man rotation against UCF. You need more. They're going to need to find another guy.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how optimistic I am about all of it right now because you're correct. Like, you would have hoped, well, you said, I guess, that I hope the wake-up call came on Tuesday. Dude, I would have hoped the wake-up call came during the first 2 months of the season. Like, it's we're pretty late in the year. Now, I'm not saying Jerome Tang's doing the wrong thing, but we're pretty late in the year for these conversations and these storylines to be happening. And some of this is, a lot of this is there's an added sense of urgency because now Quez Glover's not back. Like, how long throughout, in fairness, I'm going to argue against my own point here, for a good chunk of the year, there was still a thought like, hey, Naquan Tomlin is probably going to be back at some point. And that will lessen some of the stress or need for like a Caleb Rich or a Jarrell Colbert. And then you're like, okay, even after Naquan Tomlin's gone, you're like, all right, look, RJ Jones is struggling to figure it out as a true freshman. Day-Day Ames having some struggles, but Quez Glover is going to come back. And they wait, and they were extra patient with it. It just kills you. They were extra patient, waited an extra couple weeks to get him back. And right when he's on the precipice of coming back, has the meniscus issue again in the knee and is now likely not going to play this year. So there have been things that have changed, like circumstances have changed, but they've changed. RJ Jones is on scholarship. He was a pretty highly recruited kid. They're gonna have to find some way to get through to him, I think. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation, or else, they'll struggle. They will definitely struggle.
The other reality is, between Jones, Ames, and Rich, none were thought to be guys that you were going to need 15 to 20 minutes a night from, right? That's not what they were envisioning when they recruited these three kids. So you're also pushing them at a quicker timeline than what they're probably ready for.
No, I mean, when you look at the guys that they brought in and look who they had coming back, I mean, with Quez Glover and Naquan Tomlin thought to be a part of this roster, you're probably thinking Day-Day Ames is a 10, 12-minute a game a night guy, and maybe RJ Jones and Rich redshirt, to be frank. If Naquan Tomlin and Glover play the whole season, because Glover is going to be that other lead guard in addition to Carter and Perry, and then Day-Day will be that fourth guard, and then there's probably not room or playing time for RJ Jones as well, and then Naquan Tomlin kind of takes the rest of the minutes from Rich that he has gotten this year. So yeah, I think you're relying more on the freshmen than you probably envisioned. I mean, we've heard Jerome Tang say before he likes to redshirt his freshmen. And last year they redshirted Jarrell Colbert and redshirted Taj Manning and Dorian Finister. So this year they're having to throw those three guys in the mix earlier than maybe they might be ready. But that's just a necessity.
Well, and also we're in the age of the transfer portal and guys wanting playing time and leaving if they don't get it. It's a golden opportunity, man. You're on a team that went to the Elite Eight last year, playing in the best conference in the country. You've got the opportunity to get on the floor right now as a freshman. I don't know. I sound kind of preachy and boomery right now saying that, but it is true. It's the reality, and you just hope that would get through to somebody. Like that's an opportunity that is not going to be there for everybody. I don't know. It's frustrating, man, if you start thinking too far down the line of what this season could have been and what it's actually turned into because of the situations with Tomlin and Glover. And then even, we mentioned it briefly earlier, Cole, but Joe Toussaint, I mean, I think it's fair to say they probably could have had them if they wanted. And on paper, getting Quez Glover was a perfectly fair trade-off, especially with, some of the dynamics that are also at play behind the scenes on that. You can't foresee injuries. It is what it is. But you watch Joe Toussaint play. I mean, he's a veteran, tough guy who certainly brings effort and can score, and just would be perfect kind of player right now for this team. It would be exactly what they need in the backcourt. So it sucks. It does suck to watch that. Not only have to see him out there doing that, but seeing it do it in the Big 12. I mean, he lights up Texas for 15, and he carried Texas Tech in the first half when they were having some struggles, and we're kind of playing catch up for a little while there. It was absolutely Joe Toussaint that kept them in that game in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, he's second leading scorer for Texas Tech. He's averaging over 14 per game. He's kind of a junkyard dog type guard, point guard, and he would be a great fit for this team. There's no doubt. I mean, there's a reason that Jerome Tang and the staff jumped all over him the moment he entered the portal and had him on an official visit to Kansas State, and they thought they had it locked up, and then it became a negotiating thing. And Jerome Tang has said before he doesn't want to engage in negotiation battles like that or bidding wars and going back and forth. And so he held to his morals and ethics on that. And Joe Toussaint ended up going to Texas Tech, and he's been great for him. There's no question Joe Toussaint would change the dynamics of this team with him playing. He would play more on the ball, Tyler Perry and Cam Carter off the ball, and it would be a lot of fun to watch. You just thought you were probably getting a similar thing with Quez Glover. As you said, you can't foresee injuries. Quez Glover had really only had one injury in his 4-year career, and that was the meniscus last year. It's just terrible luck that he's had back-to-back here this year, even when they were extra cautious with him, that he suffered these knee injuries. And you just hope that he'll have a future in college basketball. Maybe he can get a medical red shirt and he can come back next year and have a healthy season at Kansas State, potentially. But you really feel for him, and you feel for, obviously, the coaching staff and everyone, because if you would have told me, I think going into the season, when K-State got Quez Glover, and I did a write-up on our Patreon page, I made an argument that Quez Glover was just as good or maybe even a better addition than Joe Toussaint to this roster if healthy, and unfortunately he's not healthy. I mean, you look at Quez Glover the last 2 years, albeit at Samford, he was a high-ranked recruit that went to Florida out of high school, and at Samford the last 2 years averaged 17 points per game and nearly 47% shooting from the floor. Explosive guard, smaller guard, but explosive. And Joe Toussaint had never averaged double figures in his career. The difference being, obviously, he's been at the Power 5 level all 4 years, so different competition level. But it's bad luck. Obviously right now you would kill for either a healthy Quez Glover or Joe Toussaint on this K-State roster, and things would look differently.
And it's anecdotal, but I go back to the other night. Was it the Chicago State game when Ben Boyle said on the broadcast that he watched practice at one point at the beginning of the year, and he walked away thinking, man, Quez Glover looked like the best player on the floor. So, it's twisting the knife, but it is what it is. I mean, we certainly wish him the best, hope he recovers, and I hope he's able to turn it around and play next year. That would be great. They're going to have to find some answers this year. Now, they're about to head to West Virginia, which Ken Palm gives them a 61% chance of winning the game, predicts a 69-66 score. It is a road game. I'll be honest. What is going on with West Virginia after like the Raekwon Battle stuff, and they had a couple of guys that they got back, right? The only thing I know about that is I saw that there was a stat like Raekwon Battle had like, I don't know, like 82 points and 1 assist since coming back or something, which is like just so on brand for what we kind of knew that that he was. A guy that K-State saw last year in the NCAA tournament for Montana State. I don't know. Cole, what's the current state of West Virginia basketball right now?
Well, I was just looking up Raekwon's assist numbers. Get this, John. Raekwon has never averaged 1 assist or more per game in his 5 years of college basketball. That is just
a hired gun. He's out there to do one thing.
That is an impressive number. He has played in how many games? He's played in 108 games and 76 assists in his career in 108 games. So, yeah, he's not looking to distribute the basketball necessarily. He's a high-volume shooter. In fact, if you look at what he's doing at West Virginia right now, John, 16.3 field goal attempts per game. So he is out there chucking it. And he's getting to the free throw line at a decent chunk. That's something K-State has to be cognizant of. Averaging almost 8 free throw attempts per game, shooting 77% from the foul line. He leads them in scoring at 21.5 points per game. He's only played in 4 games because West Virginia got those slew of guys back after the NCAA got overturned on the transfer rule. They have a bunch of guys that are 2-time transfers or more on their roster, so they got several guys back as a result of that. And then they also got Kerr Kriisa, the Arizona transfer guard, back after a 9-game suspension issued by the NCAA. So he's back. He's played in a handful of games now as well. But they lost Jesse Edwards, who was maybe the most sought-after big man in the entire transfer portal, including K-State having interest there. Syracuse transfer, averaging almost 15 points and 9 rebounds per game in his first 10 games this year. He broke his wrist and was in a cast starting on December 20th, expected to miss about 4 weeks. I just saw an update that he's getting the cast taken off any day now, but he will not play against Kansas State on Tuesday night. That's a huge loss for them. But their profile is hard to figure out only because it's hard to understand what their roster really looks like and their numbers because they've had so many guys, go up and down from playing to not playing. They've only had 7 guys play in 10 or more of their games. So I don't know. I mean, they're 135th in Ken Palm, I believe, 134th in Ken Palm. They're 175th, I believe, in the NCAA net rankings. They did play the 93rd ranked non-con strength of schedule, according to Ken Palm. K-State was 140th. They lost by 6 to St. John's about a month ago. St. John's just went on the road to beat Villanova. They're number 38 in Ken Palm. They played Pittsburgh. They lost that game, a rivalry battle. They lost to Monmouth and Radford. They've got 2 quad 4 losses. They're 2-2 in quad 4 games, 0-7 in quad 1 and quad 2 games. They're 5-9 as a team. And I don't know. I mean, they took Ohio State to overtime and lost by 3, and Ohio State's 36th in Ken Palm, and they did that on December 30th. So I think it's going to be an extremely challenging game, regardless of the fact that West Virginia just got smoked at Houston, 89-55. They ran into a buzzsaw there. I think they're still going to come out and play hard against K-State, and K-State's had a tough time winning in Morgantown over the years.
They're an island of misfit toys that have no chemistry cohesion because of the uncertainty on the transfer statuses, maybe a couple injuries, a suspension, but there is enough talent there for a team to be dangerous. They just don't know how to play with one another because they've never had the opportunity to do so. And that is always exacerbated on the road, especially when you're on the road against the number 1 team in the country. At home, that becomes a little bit less of an issue.
Yeah. Now, I don't expect there to be much of an energy in that arena. Obviously, students still on the holiday break, and they're 5-9. And it's
not every school is still on holiday break, by the way.
Yeah. Well, regardless, I would expect low energy, but from the fans at least. But I can see, like you mentioned, I mean, they got guys that can get hot. Raekwon Battle, Kirk Risa in his career has had moments where he's gotten hot. I already told you Battle's numbers. Kirk Risa, since he got back from his 9-game suspension, he's played in 5 games. He's averaging 9.4 points per game on 38% shooting from the floor, but he's averaging nearly 6 assists per game to 2.8 turnovers, shooting 37.5% from 3. In his career, out of his 661 field goal attempts, 535 have came from 3, 81%. So he's going to look to chuck it from deep. 81% of his career field goal attempts from beyond the arc in 4 years of college basketball. This year alone, 32 of his 39 attempts from the floor have come from beyond the arc. So he's going to look to shoot from 3. You got to stay glued to him so he doesn't get hot from there. Quinn Slazinski, 6'9" forward, who's actually played in all 14 of West Virginia's games. Another multi-year transfer, though. He started his career 2 years at Louisville, then went to Iona, played for Rick Pitino for the last 2 years. Came into West Virginia. He's averaging nearly 15 points per game, but under 40% from the floor. 5th season of college basketball. He's attempted 74 threes on the season, but only shooting just under 30%, attempting over 5 threes per game. Takes a lot of shots, nearly 13 field goal attempts per game. And then Noah Farrakhan. I'm probably mispronouncing this game. I'm sorry, West Virginia fans. I should have double-checked the pronunciation. But another guard they just got back due to the NCAA overturn of the rule. A multi-transfer player, started his career at East Carolina, then went to Eastern Michigan. He's played in 5 games, shooting nearly 12 field goal attempts per game, but he's making 50% from the floor and 36% from 3, more than 14 points per game. West Virginia as a team is shooting 29% from 3 on the season. That ranks 317th in the country. And as a team from overall field goal percentage, they're 302nd in the country in field goal percentage offense. Defensively, 86 nationally, holding teams to under 42% from the floor. Head coach Josh Eilert, interim coach after the mess with Bob Huggins this offseason. Josh Eilert, obviously former K-State men's basketball walk-in, native of Kansas, I believe Osborne. Is that right, John? And it's a struggle. Like you feel for West Virginia fans a little bit for what they've had to go through. They thought they were going to have a really good team with the transfer portal. They had to go through the Huggins mess then the NCAA transfer rules and all of that. Then a 9-game suspension thrown at him. Now Jesse Edwards, who was playing really well for him, breaks his wrist. So I don't know. I still think, Ken Palm has it 69-66 K-State. I think that's right. I think it'll be like the spread, which isn't out yet, but I think it'll be like K-State by 1.5, 2. I think it'll be a tight game. And if K-State gets out of there with a win, I'll be thrilled. I'll be thrilled if K-State goes 1-1 over the next 2 road games. If you split between Tech and West Virginia, I'm happy. It's hard to win on the road, regardless of what the other team's record is, especially in this league.
100%. Oh man, I would take and run sprint out of there with 1-1 on these next 2 on the road. But by the way, 2 observations here. One of the weirdest things to look at West Virginia's Ken Palm profile. Do you see the darkest red on that, Cole? What the thing is that they are worst at according to Ken Palm?
I do not.
Because it is the thing that you would think under a Bob Huggins team they would be like best at.
It's rebounding, right?
Nope. Steal percentage. They're 357th in the country.
Well, there's defensive 363 teams. So
defensive steal percentage, they are 357th. Like you think of them as being the pesky, going to get after you and get in your shorts, but that is not what this West Virginia team is. The other thing, like I do feel for Josh Eilert, and I was just going to say I just have a little story about it. He's a really nice guy. I will never forget 2012. So when did Huggins get there? It wouldn't have been too terribly long before. I guess he was there in 2010 when they went to the Final Four. But 2012, it was our first trip to Morgantown for Power Cat Game Day doing the pregame show. And so Walters and I were out there in Morgantown, and he had just like texted or something with Josh Eilert, and Josh Eilert was like, yeah, man, I'll show you around. And he like took us through everything, man. We got like a behind the scenes look at like all of West Virginia's facilities, like literally everything. It was super cool. So I was appreciating him for that. He's a good dude.
Shout out to Josh Eilert, and hopefully he gets things figured out after Kansas State plays them on Tuesday. And you're right, John. I just looked at, first of all, look at you looking at the advanced analytics and numbers there. Impressive. And if you look at like just opponent turnovers per offensive play, 346 out of 362 teams at 13.4% as well. So you're right. I hadn't even caught that. They do not turn you over. And the other thing that they're not great at is rebounding, which is another trademark of what Bob Huggins' teams was, right? I mean, I mentioned earlier, K-State 49th in the country now in rebounding rate overall, 14th in offensive rebounding percentage. West Virginia is 237th nationally at defensive rebounding percentage and 210th in the country at offensive rebounding percentage at 26%. So not gonna turn you over. They're not a great rebounding team. They've shot it terribly from three. Hopefully they don't find that fire and hit like 12 or 13 threes and have their breakout game against Kansas State.
Yeah, that's what scares you. I mean, they've got that potential with those guys that they have on their roster that can be pretty volatile one way or the other. Okay, if you want some post-game reaction instantly to K-State and West Virginia, make sure you're signed up at patreon.com/3maw. Our Patreon members will get access to that. Also, if you are wondering about transfer portal and football, because there's a lot going on there, sounds very likely that we're going to have some updates on that on the Patreon page throughout the week in audio format, patreon.com/3maw to get signed up there, just $5 a month. But also, even beyond that, if you want like minute-by-minute updates, we've been all over the Discord, which you get as a part of the Patreon membership. So basically just like a big group chat where you can see updates as they are coming in there. So patreon.com/3maw to get signed up for all of that. Anybody have any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to get out there? That's a note from DY Cole.
I don't have anything right now. So
how's Brody feeling about the season right now?
I think he's doing all right. He misses Marquise a great deal. So we were watching the NCAA tournament game from a couple weeks ago, replay of it, and he wanted to turn it off because it made him sad. Yeah, watching Marquise and seeing all the great things he did. So still loves watching the games and going to the games, but last year was a special ride, and he misses some of those dudes. I get it. I do too.
Yeah,
no doubt. Yeah.
So don't have him watch any Memphis games either. Although I realize Tomlin wasn't great yesterday, but
he fouled out. Yeah, only had 2 points, fouled out. So I'm sure the president of Kansas State toasted a glass of champagne to that one yesterday. So he watched that.
Yeah, maybe a glass of 360 vodka or Ben Holiday bottled in Mon bourbon.
We don't supply him with that. So bad. Well, speaking of bad for the brand. So yeah.
He's a smart man. That's what he would be doing because we appreciate Holiday Distillery. We appreciate our friends at Home Field Apparel as well as DraftKings. And thanks to Nick Springer behind the scenes for all of his work as always. Thanks for listening to another 3 Maw. For Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, I am John Kurtz. We will talk to you all soon.